When someone speaks to you with anger or aggression, your first instinct is often to defend yourself, to argue back, or to raise your own voice. It's a human reflex. The desire to protect your pride and to prove that you won't be walked over. But that reaction, while natural, almost always plays into the other person's hands. Aggressive people thrive on reaction. They gain energy and validation when they see you lose control. That's why the Stoic way is completely different. Stoicism teaches that control is true strength. It is not about dominating others, but about mastering yourself, your words, your emotions, and your responses. When you remain calm while someone else is losing their composure, you immediately hold the higher ground. You become untouchable not because you shout louder, but because you choose not to be moved. There are 4 verbal techniques, deeply rooted in Stoic thinking, that can transform the way you handle aggression. These are not tricks to humiliate or embarrass anyone. They're tools to disarm conflict, to expose emotional immaturity, and to turn hostility into reflection. When you use them wisely, the person attacking you begins to feel uncomfortable with their own behavior. They often end up apologizing, not because you forced them to, but because you helped them see themselves clearly. Let's go through these 4 Stoic verbal techniques and how they work in real life. The first technique is called the calm reframe. When someone speaks to you with aggression, don't react immediately. Take a slow breath and lower your voice. Then repeat their statement in a calm, neutral tone. For example, say, "If I understand correctly, you're upset because you think I ignored you, is that right?" This simple act does something powerful. It shows that you're listening. It keeps the conversation grounded, and it forces the aggressive person to hear their own words reflected back to them without the emotion. Often, when people hear their own harsh tone played back calmly, they feel its weight. They realize how unnecessary their anger sounds when spoken without emotion. This technique works because Stoicism values reason over passion. The moment you reframe an emotional attack into a rational statement, you take control of the atmosphere. You turn chaos into order and anger into awareness. The second technique is called reflective questioning. Most aggressive people act on impulse. They don't think before they speak. Their anger comes from emotion, not logic. That's why asking calm, thoughtful questions can break their pattern completely. For instance, you might say, "Why is this so important to you?" Or, "What do you think would be a fair way to handle this?" These are not defensive questions. They are invitations to reason. They make the other person stop and think, forcing their rational brain to take over. The fourth and final technique is called the calm boundary. This one is for moments when kindness and logic are not enough, when the other person refuses to calm down or respect your space. A Stoic doesn't tolerate abuse or disrespect in the name of patience. They know when to stand firm. But firmness doesn't mean shouting or threatening. It means calmly asserting your limits with dignity. For example, you can say, "I understand you're upset, but I won't continue this conversation if it stays disrespectful." Or, "Let's talk later when we can both speak calmly." This is not aggression, it's composure. You're showing that your peace is non-negotiable. When you draw a clear line without anger, it forces the other person to confront their behavior. They may not admit it right away, but boundaries plant a seed of reflection. Later, when their emotions settle, they often feel remorse or embarrassment for how they acted. That's the power of calm authority. It commands respect without ever demanding it. These 4 Stoic verbal techniques, calm reframing, reflective questioning, unexpected humility, and calm boundaries, all point to the same truth. Real power is emotional control. When you master your words, you master the situation. You show others that your peace cannot be taken from you. The goal isn't to make someone feel small or defeated, but to create space for awareness. The aggressive person may walk away thinking, "Why did I act like that?" And that realization, that quiet sense of shame or reflection, is what truly makes them sorry. In the end, Stoicism reminds us that you cannot control how others behave, but you can always control how you respond. Every time you choose calm over chaos, reason over rage, and strength over pride, you elevate yourself above the conflict. You teach by example that silence can be more powerful than shouting, and restraint can be stronger than revenge. That is how you turn aggression into reflection, not by overpowering others, but by mastering yourself. That's the Stoic way. To understand why these 4 verbal tricks truly work, we need to step into the psychology of aggression. Aggression is rarely about logic. It's almost always about emotion, ego, and insecurity. When someone becomes verbally aggressive, what they are really saying is, I want control. They want to dominate the moment, to make you feel smaller, to prove that their anger gives them power. The Stoic response removes that illusion completely. When you refuse to react emotionally, when you speak calmly instead of shouting, when you ask questions instead of arguing, you take away the fuel that powers their behavior. In that instant, their aggression begins to collapse. They don't just lose control of you, they lose control of themselves. Stoicism has always taught that control over reaction equals control over reality. You can't always choose what happens to you, but you can always choose your response. And that response determines everything: your peace, your power, and even how others treat you. The following insights reveal why each verbal technique pierces through aggression and turns an angry person toward reflection, guilt, or even apology. Let's begin with the first one, the calm reframe. When you reframe someone's angry statement in a calm tone, something powerful happens in their mind. The human brain expects tension to be met with tension. When someone attacks verbally, they're unconsciously waiting for a reaction, a defensive tone, a loud word, or visible irritation. But when you don't give them that reaction, their emotional rhythm breaks. Psychologists call this the disruption of the conflict cycle. The aggressor feels momentarily lost because the script in their mind no longer matches reality. They expect heat and get stillness. That stillness becomes a mirror, reflecting their behavior back at them. When you calmly repeat or clarify their words and, for example, saying, "If I understand correctly," you're saying you felt ignored, right? They are forced to hear how they sound. Their tone begins to feel exaggerated, their anger suddenly unnecessary. You haven't attacked them. You've simply shown them what they look like, and that quietly starts to humble them. The calm reframe works because it shifts the focus from emotion to reason. Stoicism teaches that emotions are waves, but reason is the shore. When you bring a heated conversation back to reason, the waves naturally lose strength. You don't need to control them. They settle on their own. The second trick, reflective questioning, is even more subtle but just as effective. Most people in a state of anger are not thinking. They are reacting. Their words come from the amygdala, the emotional part of the brain that's responsible for fight or flight responses. When you calmly ask them a thoughtful question like, "Why does this bother you so much?" Or, "What do you think would be fair here?" You engage a different part of their brain, the prefrontal cortex, which governs logic, empathy, and problem-solving. In that moment, their mind must pause. It must think, and thinking is the enemy of rage. This technique works like emotional alchemy. It turns fire into thought. It doesn't just calm them, it invites them to analyze their own emotion. Most people are not used to that level of reflection in the heat of conflict, and that pause often leads to realization. They begin to recognize that their anger might be misplaced, exaggerated, or even unjustified. You've not only defended yourself without aggression, you've helped them grow a little in awareness, and that is a deeply Stoic act. To elevate the conversation without lowering yourself. The third trick, unexpected humility, may seem counterintuitive, but it's perhaps the most disarming of all. When someone attacks, their ego is ready for resistance. They expect you to defend, argue, justify, or fight back. But when you respond with gentle humility, saying something like, "You might be right. I could have handled that better," it's like pulling the ground out from under their feet. Their ego suddenly has nothing to push against. The aggression loses oxygen because there is no longer opposition. Now, it's important to understand that this humility is not weakness. It's not submission or surrender. It's strategic calmness, the kind that comes from knowing your worth so deeply that you don't need to prove it. You choose humility because you know that truth doesn't need to shout. Psychologically, this creates dissonance in the aggressor's mind. They expected a battle, but they're faced with grace. Their ego becomes confused, even guilty. It's a feeling that often lingers. And later, when their emotions have cooled, that guilt turns into apology or quiet respect. Stoic philosophers like Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus understood this perfectly. They taught that pride and anger are twin poisons. The wise person never fights fire with fire. They fight it with light. When you remain calm and humble, you don't lose. You elevate. You show that peace can be stronger than any verbal weapon. Finally comes the fourth technique, the calm boundary. This is where many people misunderstand Stoicism. Being calm doesn't mean tolerating disrespect. Being peaceful doesn't mean being passive. A true Stoic knows when to speak firmly. The difference is in the energy, not anger but authority. A calm boundary sounds like this. I understand that you're upset, but I won't continue if we can't speak respectfully. Or, I'll be ready to talk when we're both calm. The truth is, these 4 verbal tricks only work if your mind is disciplined, enough to stay calm when it matters. Anyone can speak wisely when things are peaceful, but the real test of character comes when someone tries to provoke you. In that moment, your old instincts rise up, your heart rate increases, your muscles tighten, and your ego whispers. Don't let them disrespect you. That's when most people fail, and not because they don't know what to say, but because they lose control before they can think clearly. The Stoics understood this perfectly. They believed that self-mastery is not a gift. It's a skill, one that must be trained every day like a muscle. So how do you build that kind of composure, the kind that makes you unshakable, even in front of aggression? The answer lies in the Stoic practices of awareness, emotional detachment, and premeditation. These practices reprogram the way your mind and body respond to confrontation, so that instead of reacting automatically, you respond consciously. The first Stoic exercise is self-observation, learning to see your emotions before they take over. Most people don't notice their anger until it's already controlling them. But the Stoic trains the mind to notice the first flicker of emotion, the first tightening in the chest or heat in the face, and then breathe through it. Marcus Aurelius often wrote in his Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." That simple line is a reminder that the first battlefield is always internal. Before you speak, before you respond, you pause and observe. That pause is where power lives. In that small space between stimulus and response, you choose whether you will be a slave to emotion or the master of it. Start small. When something irritates you, traffic, rudeness, delays, don't immediately express frustration. Instead, just observe your reaction. Ask yourself silently, what am I feeling right now? This act of noticing creates distance between you and your emotion. The Stoics called this the view from above, seeing your feelings as passing weather, not as your identity. Over time, that awareness grows stronger, and you begin to carry calmness into every situation, even the hostile ones. The second practice is emotional detachment, not in the sense of becoming cold or uncaring, but in understanding that other people's emotions are not your responsibility. When someone speaks to you with anger, it's not your job to fix their emotion or absorb their energy. You can acknowledge it without owning it. Epictetus taught, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. You can extend that wisdom. It's not what others feel. It's what you choose to carry. To strengthen this mindset, practice what the Stoics called premeditatio malorum, or preparation for adversity. Each morning, visualize possible challenges: a rude coworker, an impatient customer, a disrespectful stranger. Picture yourself responding calmly with control, just as you would want to in real life. By rehearsing mentally, you train your nervous system to stay steady when it happens for real. The brain doesn't fully distinguish between mental, rehearsal, and actual experience, so the more you visualize calmness, the more automatic it becomes. Another Stoic habit that builds emotional strength is journaling. At the end of the day, write down moments where you reacted, moments when you lost your cool, or when you succeeded in staying calm. Don't judge yourself. Just observe. Over time, you'll start seeing patterns. What triggers you? What strengthens you? What weakens you? That awareness itself becomes armor. The Stoics journaled not to analyze others, but to purify their own perception. Each reflection polishes your inner clarity, making you harder to shake and easier to reason with. The next step is intentional silence. In a noisy world where everyone is ready to respond, silence becomes a sign of mastery. Practice saying less. Practice not responding to every provocation, every negative comment, every attempt to drag you into drama. Seneca once said, "A wise man is content with himself." The more comfortable you become with silence, the more others begin to feel your calmness as authority. Silence doesn't mean weakness. It means you value peace over performance. But the most powerful training of all is learning to separate insult from identity. Most aggression succeeds because we take words personally. We let someone's disrespect pierce our sense of self. Stoicism teaches the opposite. What others say is a reflection of their character, not yours. If a person calls you a fool, it doesn't make you one. It only reveals their own lack of understanding. The moment you stop taking offense, their weapon becomes useless. You disarm them without saying a word. Remember, calmness doesn't mean emotionless living. It means your emotions no longer rule your actions. It means you still feel anger, frustration, or pain, but you process them with wisdom, not impulse. The Stoics never denied emotion. They just refused to be enslaved by it. In fact, true Stoic calm is not coldness. It's warmth under control. It's strength guided by clarity. When you practice these disciplines every day, self-observation, detachment, visualization, journaling, silence, and the art of not taking things personally, you transform your inner world. Gradually, your emotional baseline changes. You no longer get hooked by every negative tone or disrespectful gesture. You learn to see aggression as noise, not threat. And that's when these 4 verbal tricks from earlier become natural. You no longer try to reframe calmly, you just do it. You no longer force humility. It flows from genuine peace. Your calm boundaries come out effortlessly, because your sense of worth no longer depends on anyone's approval or respect. When you master the art of staying calm, something almost mystical happens. The entire power dynamic between you and the aggressive person shifts. You no longer dance to their emotional rhythm. You stop feeding the fire they're trying to start. And in that stillness, their aggression begins to echo back to them. They start to feel small in the presence of your peace. This is where the real transformation begins. Not just in how you handle conflict, but in how others begin to see you. Aggressive people feed on reaction. They're not always after truth or resolution. They're after control. They want to make you emotional, defensive, or weak, because it gives them a temporary sense of power. But when you refuse to play that game, when your face remains composed and your words come out measured and precise, something shifts inside them. Suddenly, their anger feels out of place. Their noise feels foolish next to your quiet authority. It's like they've thrown a punch at water. There's no resistance, no satisfaction, just emptiness. That's the first step toward making an aggressive person feel sorry and showing them that their aggression cannot move you. When they realize they've lost emotional control while you remain still, they begin to sense their own weakness, and no one likes feeling weak. That discomfort becomes the seed of regret. The second way calmness creates regret is through mirror awareness. Human beings naturally mirror emotions. When someone yells, we tense up. When someone smiles, we soften. But when you stay composed while someone is shouting, your calmness reflects back to them like a mirror. In that reflection, they see themselves loud, irrational, out of control. And that moment of self-recognition is powerful. It often triggers shame or embarrassment. Suddenly, they're not proud of how they sound. They start lowering their voice. They might even apologize, and not because you demanded it, but because your composure exposed their lack of it. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike your enemy." That's the Stoic way. You don't lower yourself to their chaos. You rise above it so completely that they're forced to look up. The more they try to drag you into conflict, the more your calmness reveals their insecurity. A third reason calmness changes people's behavior is respect born from unpredictability. Most people expect aggression to be met with aggression. When you respond differently, calmly, intelligently, with precise control, it disorients them. You've stepped outside their emotional script. They can't predict your reaction anymore. And that unpredictability creates power. People fear what they can't predict. That's why calmness is intimidating. You don't show what you feel. You decide what you express. That makes them cautious, even respectful.